All right. Thank you for coming to the HOA Fight Club online educational series. I am doing these series to help not just the homeowners and the boards, but the property managers to know how everything should run in an association. These are all my opinions. I am not an attorney. I am a homeowner that has gone through quite a bit of pain and suffering with my association that I was a part of. I have settled my lawsuit with the association in 2020 in February. So I was successful. They ended up settling and pain and suffering to me at the end and purchasing back my condo at full asking price. So we need to make sure that that kind of stuff hurts homeowners. Whether, if a homeowner sues their association, they're suing themselves and they're suing their friends and family. And we should be doing everything we can to keep everything ran by the bylaws and the declaration or covenants so that these associations aren't put up to be sued. And it's really simple. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys. I'm really new at this, so bear with me. Let's see, we're going to share the screen that way and share. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
So, okay, so fines. Fines. So in your declarations it's usually in the declaration what the purpose of a homeowner's fine is. Every HOA can fine a homeowner for their past due assessment, not their past due assessments, but their rules and regulations that they put into place. So the one thing about those rules and regulations that I always tell people to watch out for is the rules and regulations or operations manuals, whatever they're called, cannot violate the bylaws and the CC&Rs. What I am finding as I'm going through helping people is boards and property managers don't understand the CC&Rs. Some of them don't even know the CC&Rs, so they don't use them and they just create rules and regulations of their own. One example of a board creating a rule was my association created rules for the garages. Now, in hindsight, I didn't know at the beginning that we actually owned our garages and the association could not make rules for anything we owned. So that was something that they were actually fining people for having a car that's not working in their garage. They'd fine the person in 15 days, they'd put late fees and property manager fees, to collect these fines. And then they'd start adding attorney fees. Well, within 15 days, they were $3,000 past due. And within 45 days, the association board would have a lien on them. And in 90 days, they would foreclose. So that's what they were trying to do to me because I was speaking up. So we really want to make sure that everybody knows that a homeowner association can fine you, but there are rules to being fined. So the purpose of an association and the reason for them to fine, I went into my rules and regulations in the declaration. The covenants of the association spell out the purpose of fines. They should create harmony and keep homeowners in compliance of the covenants. Rules and regulations shall follow the declaration of bylaws and not deviate from it without the needed vote of the ownership. So I put in my CC&Rs, this is what it said about rules and regulations here. It said, acting for the association, the director shall have the authority to adopt, change, amend, and repeal rules and regulations governing the use of regulations condominium and common elements by the unit owners and others, provided that the rules and regulations shall be uniformly applicable to other owners. So if an association board allows for one member to be in violation of the CC&Rs, they have to allow all members to be in violation of the CC&Rs. If they're going to fine one homeowner for whatever's wrong, painting their home, but they didn't fine everybody else, that is selective enforcement. And I find that if you make a complaint to your association, or you ask for records, they seem to all of a sudden start fining you. And that's why I really feel like the fines should be in this, they have to be, they shall be in the CC&R. So it doesn't say that they can fine for garages because you own them. They can't fine for that. And people need to know that so they can stand up to for their rights. Prior to purchase, a homeowner or a consumer should understand that they're purchasing into a corporation. I think that if more people understood that they're not purchasing a home or a condo, they are purchasing into a corporation that is being ran by a board of directors. That board of directors has complete control and power of the association. They only need the majority vote of the board at all meetings to be able to do a lot of things, to find people in that. What it takes, though, to change those laws, it takes the vote of the people. And if people knew that they knew what their rules and regulations said and their declaration and their bylaws said, they would not have the issues they have. So whenever somebody gets fined, I always ask them for the declaration and the bylaws first. The corporation has power of attorney over your homes. So you want to make sure that you understand these CC&Rs, the covenants, the bylaws, the declaration, whatever it's called, they're above the state law. The state, it goes declaration, bylaws, rules and regulations, and then the state law. So these corporations are above the Constitution. Don't let them, don't think that they're not. They've taken your constitutional rights away when legislators created these laws. So you have to know how to fight using the CC&Rs and the bylaws. I always tell everybody to know your rights before you buy into an association, and do not ignore your duty. You want to hold your boards accountable and demand your legislators amend the laws and create a HOA Homeowner Bill of Rights, which I'm going to be asking the legislators of Washington State. We need a homeowner's bill of rights. We need to be able to spell out what our rights are so that no corporation can be above the law. The legislators should be held accountable for violating the US, and in some, well, 2 states you can't sign away your constitutional rights, Arizona and Washington. Every other state allows you to sign away your constitutional rights, and that is unconstitutional in itself. So we need to demand better from our legislators. I always say, in my opinion, taking a home for fines is cruel and unusual punishment, especially if no due process is offered, because they can lien your home and they can take your home in such a short amount of time. So in 90 days in Washington, you can lose your home to an HOA. So we want to make sure that that's very clear and homeowners understand their rights. I did put that in there for the lien and the foreclosure. Every CC&R declaration will have what the lien and foreclosure process is. And most homeowners do not know that associations can non-judicially foreclose on you. So that means they don't have to go to court. When you purchase your home, there's kind of a lien already on your home. And since the board has power of attorney, all they have to do is pay for the lien to be put on your home. They don't need any evidence. They just need to sign off a little thing that you violated the rules, and these assessments were added to your account. Now I'm trying to change that law also, because I think that every homeowner deserves due process before they lose their home. So I'm working on those laws. A fair fine policy keeps an HOA protected. So I read that off of another person, and they were directing this towards the board. Everything should be fair. The goal of the association should not be to put homeowners into foreclosure, but to protect their investments and keep harmony in the community. Now, if you have 2 homeowners fighting amongst themselves, that's not harmony. And the association does have a responsibility to make sure that those homeowners aren't harassing each other, and they keep everything to protect the community. If you have 2 homeowners fighting, that does not protect the community. The board is a great way to become an impartial tribunal and be fair to all homeowners. I think it's really hard for boards to remain impartial since they're doing the fining. So I don't agree that boards should be the people to implement. They can implement a fine, but they shouldn't be the impartial tribunal at the end. I'm also working in Washington State to have these laws for fines and fees and attorney's fees. If a board wants to assess those fines, they should have to fight it out in small claims court. Small claims court is the cheapest way for homeowners to deal with this. Usually it's $5,000 to $10,000, so it falls under those, that amount. I think that we would be more successful in keeping harmony in these communities if we took the fining process and put it into the small claims court, so that there is a judge that is looking at both sides fairly and equally. Um, Due process is so important. If you get fined, what do you do? So when I got fined, the first thing I did was go into my CC&Rs. I read the declaration, I read the bylaws. What I found is that the board wasn't following due process. There was actually in our CC&Rs, there was a page in the declaration that said Appendix A. And what that Appendix A was the due process page. It spelled out the homeowner's rights and whether, what they had to do once they were fined, how long they had to do it, that they were allowed to have an attorney. Most homeowners don't know that they can have, if there's a due process hearing, that they can have their attorney present with them to help represent them. It is at their own cost, but they can have that. Now, a board cannot have an attorney present at any due process hearing without alerting the homeowner, and if the homeowner has an attorney to represent them, alerting them to the same meeting. That is a due process hearing, and an attorney does not have the right to be there. That is the board, that is the tribunal, and they shouldn't be influenced by an attorney at all. So I find that very unethical for attorneys to jump in before the process of the CC&Rs has been followed. The CC&Rs spell out exactly what's supposed to happen. You are to be fined, you are to have a right to be heard. Then if they don't they don't agree with it and they still want to fine you, they can implement that fine, they can charge late fees, they can do whatever they want, but they shouldn't go to an attorney until all the processes have been done. I know in my association, I think there was like 10 things that should have happened before they ever called an attorney, which of course they were skipping everything. They weren't doing any of the due process elements of the declaration. If you get fined, let's start with that. You need to ask for a hearing with the board. In that hearing, before you go to that hearing with the board, you need to ask for witnesses. You need to ask for evidence. Anything that the board is going to use to make a decision in that due process hearing, they can call it a hearing if they want. You have a right to all evidence that the board is using to determine whether you should be fined. If the board does not have any evidence or any witnesses to testify, then there should not be a due process hearing at all. There's no reason to be heard because the board has no evidence that the homeowner even committed that violation. You cannot do anything on hearsay. So demand that your board have the due process hearing and make sure that attorneys are not attending. That would be unethical. And those attorneys should be turned in for those violations. They should not ever show up without being announced, even to the membership. I'm finding that attorneys are doing this. They're being on a retainer for associations, and those attorneys are the ones that are actually violating the CC&Rs by advising boards to ignore them. If you are an attorney and advise a board to ignore the CC&Rs, you should be held for ethics violations. That's my opinion. All right, so we talk about the association attorney. The association is to be ran by the board of directors. Every decision an association makes requires a majority vote of the directors. Every decision, every fine, you can have an architectural committee. That architectural committee can make a determination. The board has to verify that verification that it follows the CC&Rs, and the board is held responsible for that, and they must vote for it. So you need to make sure that everything, especially, I know that we have property managers on here. You need to make sure that your board is following that the board is keeping all records, that they're making sure that the votes are there. To change a bylaws, it takes 50 to 67% of the ownership. Those meetings have to be called to change those. The declaration, I know, is like 75% to 90% in some corporations. So there should not be changes all the time to your documents. They should stay pretty standard because those covenants run with the land, and they run with the land for the board, and they run with the land for the homeowners. You are all equal owners. So if your board decides to fine you, here is what you're going to do. Find your declaration and bylaws and read them over and over. If the declaration, bylaws, or rules and regulations have not been quoted on the fine letter, ask for verification of which exact one you're in violation of. When a board finds you, they have to quote the declaration or the bylaws or the rules and regulation. So you know exactly which CC&R you're in violation of. I know that there's a lot of boards that don't quote anything. They just send a letter saying they don't like something. It has to be in the documents. Demand a due process hearing for the right to be heard. You always, I don't care if you get a warning letter or a fine, you want a hearing with the board. There are homeowners that contact me. They say they've been fined. What I find out is at the end is sometimes those homeowners should have been fined. I don't, when I see a homeowner that did violate the CC&Rs and the board has fined them correctly, I tell the homeowner that they have violated the CC&Rs and they should have been fined. But what the homeowners don't know is they can go to these due process hearings or these hearings and explain what happened and ask for the mercy of the board. You know, finding people a $500 fee is just crazy, especially in these days and times. We need to be able to come in and be reasonable. I know one homeowner that I had requested, he had been fined the $500. I wrote an email to the board requesting that the fine be reduced or dismissed. The homeowner was completely sorry for what they had done and didn't realize that it was a violation and will never do it again. That board decreased that fine from $500 to $100, which I felt was very fair. He did violate the CC&Rs. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't be fined, but you should know your rights when you are fined. And just as in our normal court system, you have the right to beg for the mercy of the court. Ask for all evidence before you go to a hearing. All materials being used by board or an impartial tribunal to make a fair decision. Is it fair if they're not impartial? I think that a board member with a conflict of interest should not serve if they are friends or family, or it's a neighbor issue. A board member should be able to recuse themselves from that tribunal if they have a conflict of interest, if one of their family or friends are in the process of being fined for something. We should make sure that everything is fair and equal. I know that there's an association out there that I have that has a family member on the board and the other family member that's not on the board in two different homes. And the board is always after the one that's not on the board. And that's just not fair. That because her sister doesn't like her or they have an issue, she uses it against her sister in the association, which is completely a conflict of interest. If you request a hearing and it is denied by the board, send a certified letter to the address of the record of the association to the president and secretary demanding that hearing. You have a right to be heard. If an attorney is sending you letters or contacting you, I would ask them why they're contacting you without the process of the CC&Rs being followed. Attorneys need conflict to assure that they will be in business, but should not violate the process of the CC&Rs for potential profit. Only the attorney benefits from these disputes. In HOA, the attorneys get paid no matter what, no matter if they're right or wrong. So homeowners need to understand that if they want to save money, the first place they should look is at the attorney's fees that they're paying from their association. My association paid $26,000 to come after me for a $50 fine. That is unreasonable. So it hurt the association. It put the association up to be sued. So we need to make sure that we are following the CC&Rs on both sides and that the attorneys and the property managers are following those. It's really important for everyone to know what they bought into and the rules that apply. Let's go down to small claims court. Now I've mentioned small claims court. Small claims court is an inexpensive way to have an impartial judge. I know that CAI, which is a trades group, will charge $250 to $275 for their mediation services. I have an opinion about that. I don't think that any trades group that has members and non-members should be able to be a mediator. You're giving members discounts and favors while you're holding the others responsible for the full price. It's just a huge conflict of interest there for me. A lot of property managers and attorneys are members of CAI or another type of corporation trades group. Those people have taken an oath to CAI to always do its best for CAI first, not a homeowners association. So I just have conflict of interest with CAI and some of the things that they do. I don't think that any member of CAI should be able to represent an association without, it just seems like the conflict of interest again. My nonprofit helps boards and homeowners for free. The reason I do this is for free is to make sure that the covenants are being followed. I'm not making any money off of this, so I can stay really impartial, look at the CC&Rs, show what the CC&Rs say, and it makes things really, really more easy to work with. I find that boards that actually learn their CC&Rs create harmony for the homeowners, and it's a great place to live. They're protecting your sanctuary. We should have a right to sanctuary. And that is our homes. So that's just something that makes it a lot easier for me, because I don't have any financial interest in this. I don't gain anything by doing what I do for free. The nonprofit makes it a lot easier to do this. All right, so boards will collect fines. If you fine, or if you fail to pay a fine and do not request a hearing, the board will add late fees and processing fees, usually after 10 days. After 15 days, late fees and another fine can apply. In some circumstances, it might take longer in others, but this is just an average by going by Washington state law. After 15 days, late fees are added and another fine for failure to pay. These fees are continued every 10 days. So you have 10 days to request the hearing and have it. And then if you don't, then it keeps going and they can keep adding fees. After 45 days of late fees, interest added to the association, in most states, the board will hire an attorney, spend the $2,000 to $3,000, and in 10 days, a lien will be applied because you're now past due the 6 months, worth the 3 to 6 month past due in assessments. Like I said, I did change this in Washington state. You can only foreclose in Washington state for the actual assessments that are past due. You have a right to a housing counselor now in Washington state for low to no cost. So if your state is applying liens and foreclosing and allowing this, I would call your legislators and ask them to follow Washington state's example for protecting homeowners. It's really, really important that we do not put people on the streets. You're putting families on the street if you foreclose in an association. In 90 days, in most cases, the association can foreclose non-judicially, which means they can just do it. Now, again, Washington state has different laws that have been put into place to protect homeowners from these foreclosures. So know your laws. Whoops. I keep hitting the wrong button. Sorry, guys. So know the laws so that you can defend your home. If you're having problems with your association, please contact me right away. I mean, I will read the CC&Rs within a few minutes and be able to respond very easily. And the only thing I do is usually cut and paste the CC&Rs so that the homeowner or the board or the property manager can see what's being quoted out of their CC&Rs. I do not, I will not help somebody that's actually in violation of the CC&Rs. I'll help them, but I won't advocate for them to be able to be dismissed if they're actually violating the rules and that. So I try to be really, really fair. And I would hope that we would have people that like CAI, I wish CAI would start a nonprofit that would help homeowners. Somebody needs to represent the homeowner side in everything. And because the association is always represented, but the homeowners aren't. And for homeowners to get information, it's really, really hard because the boards are allowed to violate the CC&Rs. And if a board rejects your records request, they should be turned in for violating the CC&Rs. That should be a fine, just like the rest of us would be fined. I know that in my declaration, it said the board was held to a higher standard than the rest of the homeowners. So those board members should have had to step down if they violated the CC&Rs. So knowing and being educated about your documents is the most important thing. It will help you understand what you can do and how to deal with rogue boards, because there are rogue boards out there. Some of them have been allowed to violate the laws for so many years, and people are waking up to their rights and asking for the government to protect us now. So make sure you speak up, and you can always CC me on any letters or emails that you're sending to your board, just so you have another witness, which really does help. So for those of you that are here, do you have any questions? All right.
I don't think so. Thank you.
Yeah, I really do appreciate, the representation from homeowners and property managers that are on here. I think as property managers, you're in a really, really tough position because you're trying to do what the board tells you to do. It's hard when a board is telling you to do something wrong and you know it's wrong, but they're demanding you do it anyways. So if I was a property manager, I would resign from that property because it's just not worth the heartache and the headaches. And it's really sad that we have to worry about that, because there should be laws to protect everybody. So, did anybody have a comment? All right.
So.
All right. I really appreciate you guys. It's a little bit of a shorter thing today. I just wanted to go through why fines and how to deal with those fines. So I think that I will, of course, I'll post this in the thing. And if anybody would like me to email my little spiel here, you can email me at hoafightclub@gmail.com, and I can answer any of your questions. And if you're having any issues, don't hesitate to let me know. I can help you work through those issues, give you advice that what I would do. I've been pretty successful in dealing with most people's issues without having to deal with attorneys and that. So usually we can put a board and homeowners back on the right track without having too many issues and without having lawsuits. We should all want to make sure that our association is not going to be sued for any reason. If you're asking for records, make sure that you tell them your intent is because you're a homeowner and you have the right to those records. That is the only intent you need. You want transparency. So if we don't have any more questions, we're going to end that for today, and I'll see you next week on the next one. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend. And if you have any questions, just give me a call.